My parents kicked me and my son out of the car in desert Sneering. Leeches need to learn to crawl. The red taillights disappeared into the desert dark, and my knees hit the gravel. I wrapped my arm around my 6-year-old son barefoot and shaking. "Mommy, are they coming back?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was burning from the dust and from what they'd said. "You leeches need to learn to crawl." That was the last thing my father said without even turning around. He threw my duffel bag into the dirt, slammed the car door, and drove off. My mother, she didn't say a word, just watched with her arms crossed and her lips curled like I was dirt on her shoe. They didn't care that we had no phone, no water, no signal, just two humans stranded in the Mojave. At 2 a.m., the last exit was 40 minutes back. We had come for a simple 2-day visit, but it turned into a screaming match. When they asked me to lend them Mason's child support money, when I said no, my dad exploded, called me ungrateful, said I owed them. Then he nearly drove off the road from yelling so hard. Now here we were alone. Mason tugged on my sleeve. My feet hurt. I slipped off my sweater, wrapped it around him, and pulled out an old pair of ballet flats from the duffel. They were 3. Sizes too big, but he didn't complain. "Try to sleep, baby. I'll figure something out." He curled up beside me and used the duffel as a pillow. They always hated that I kept Mason. "You ruined your future," my mom had hissed. "No man's going to marry a girl with baggage," my dad said, and for years I believed them. But Mason was the only person who ever looked at me like I mattered. I didn't sleep that night. My back ached from sitting on gravel. I watched the stars fade to gray and prayed someone would stop. Just as I was thinking we'd have to walk, a pickup truck slowed. An older woman leaned out the window. "You two okay?" "Our car broke down." I lied. She didn't question it. Just opened the passenger door. "Get in." I don't asked twice. Her name was Sandra. She didn't ask for details, just handed me water, turned up the heat, and drove. After a long silence, she said, "You look like someone whose family should be ashamed." I blinked. "I was kicked out too," she said. "Pregnant, cold, now I rescue stray girls." She gave us a couch, a cot, food that made Mason smile, and most of all, face. In that silence, something shifted. What my parents did wasn't just cruel. It was punishment for saying no, for choosing myself. They tried to break me, but something else snapped instead. Within 2 weeks, my body healed. My soul, not yet. Sandra offered work at her garage. I learned to change oil, rotate tires, replace timing belts. And slowly, I remembered who I was before they convinced me I was worthless. Then one night, I found an old family group chat. My mom's last message read, "You always twist things to make us look bad." I stared at it for too long. My drama, as if they hadn't dumped me and my child into a desert. I didn't want revenge. I wanted eraser. I changed my last name. Sandra signed as my witness. Mason took mine too. I cut the phone line, deleted every trace, and disappeared from their world on paper and in spirit. But then Mason mailed a letter. I found it in the garage mailbox, scrolled in crayon. "Dear Grandma and Grandpa, I love Mommy. You were mean, but if you say sorry, maybe we can see you again." 3 stick figures, 1 smiling, 2 frowning. I didn't send it. I delivered it. 3 months later, I stood on their porch. My mom opened the door, shocked. My dad smirked behind her. "She's back," knew she'd come crawling. They smiled. I didn't come to crawl. I came to bury. They laughed until I handed them a shoebox. Inside my name change, legal eraser from there, Will. Mason's birthday photo and the letter they would never read. "You threw me out like trash," I said. "I'm just here to put the lid on the can." Then I walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I erased them the way they erased me. And this time, I didn't look. The desert night was cold, but the fire ignited inside me burned brighter than any abrasion on my knees or sting in my throat. Being abandoned, by blood, by the people who were supposed to protect me and my son, was more than cruelty. It was a violent severing of roots, a declaration that we were no longer wanted or worthy of love. But instead of breaking me, it sparked a fierce hope I didn't know I had. Sandra's kindness became my lifeline. Her garage became my sanctuary. As I learned how to wrench bolts, change oil, and rotate tires, I was also reclaiming my identity, one I had long buried beneath shame and the weight of my parents' words. Every greasy handprint, every successful repair was a tiny victory against the narrative they'd forced on me. My soul still ached from their betrayal, but for the first time, I felt strong enough to hold my head up, to face the world on my own terms. The moment I found that last bitter message from my mother, the phrase, "You always twist things to make us look bad," echoed in my mind. Who was the real victim? The mother who abandoned her child in the desert, or the daughter who survived it? I didn't seek revenge. I sought erasure. Changing my last name was my symbol of rebirth. Mason took it too. We cut ties on paper and spirit, disappearing from their lives like ghosts. Then came the letter from Mason, written in crayon with his innocent plea for forgiveness. I never sent it back. Instead, I carried it with me as a testament to hope. For my son's heart, not theirs. 3 months later, standing on their porch, I wasn't the girl they abandoned. I was the woman who had survived and would no longer be controlled. Their smug smiles didn't intimidate me. When I handed them a shoebox, a box holding my legal name change and Mason's untouched birthday photo, they saw not a beggar but a queen drawing her final line. "You threw me out like trash," I told them. "I'm just here to put the lid on the can." No slammed doors, no shouting, just quiet strength as I turned and walked away. I didn't look back, because the life I deserved was waiting, and it was mine. To claim. Story. On my son's wedding day, I helped pay for the party, picked out his favorite venue, and even paid for the food. But when I looked over at the head table, the seat next to him was saved for my ex-wife and her new husband. Even the family dog had a spot. He looked at me and said, "Come on, Dad. You always liked staying in the background. You're just back, where you belong." I didn't say a word. Right before I walked out, I left a small box on the table. When he opened it, the whole room went dead silent. Chapter 1. A Father's Quiet Sacrifice. The venue sparkled with fairy lights and white roses, just like my son always wanted. I'd arranged every detail. I'd paid the $42,000 invoice in full. I even helped him rehearse his vows. My hands had built this moment brick by brick. But as I stepped into the reception hall, I immediately sensed something off. I scanned the head table. 10 seats. My ex-wife sat proudly beside our son, her hand resting on the shoulder of her new husband, Tom, the guy she left me for 10 years ago. Next to them was their dog with its own embroidered cushion and champagne saucer, and my seat tucked at a round table near the kitchen next to the DJ's speaker marked Father of the Groom Overflow. My throat tightened, but I swallowed the sting. This was his day, right? As I approached the head table to offer congratulations, my son, my only child, turned and smirked. "Come on, Dad, you always liked staying in the background," he said with a laugh, as if I were some stagehand, not the man who raised him. "You're just back where you belong." My mouth opened, but no words came out. Instead, I gave a small nod. I turned around, walked toward my place near the speaker, but not before reaching into my coat pocket and gently placing a small wooden box, handcrafted, right in front of his seat. I said nothing. Not a single soul noticed me leave, but they would remember what happened next for the rest of their lives. Chapter 2. The Box That Broke the Silence. The music was loud. Laughter bounced off the chandeliers. Champagne flutes clink-ticked. The perfect wedding reception for everyone but the man who made it possible. I stood just outside the glass doors, watching through the curtain. No one noticed. I was gone. No one came looking, not even my son. But I didn't leave. Not yet. Inside, the bride raised a toast. My ex-wife beamed with pride. Her husband, Tom, gave a smug nod as if he owned the night. And then my son finally noticed the small wooden box I had placed in front of him. It was engraved with his initials and the date of the wedding. He opened it with a chuckle, probably expecting some sentimental keepsake. Maybe cufflinks, maybe a letter. But instead, he pulled out a folded document. Then another, then another. At first, his expression didn't change until the blood drained from his face. The room quieted. He unfolded the final page. His lips moved as he read. Then he stood up violently, his chair screeching behind him. "What is this?" he shouted. Everyone turned. My ex-wife rushed over to him, trying to peer at the papers, but her face changed just as fast. "What did you do?" she hissed. Tom grabbed the document from her trembling fingers. His eyes scanned the lines, and suddenly the smirk vanished, because what I left in that little box was the legal transfer of ownership for the venue, now under new management. Mine, the catering business, sold, liquidated, and profits redirected. The $275,000 college fund I had quietly moved into a private trust. Revoked. And worst of all, the deed to the home they lived in, which I had legally repossessed 2 days earlier, after quietly buying it from the landlord. The final document, a simple typed letter to my beloved son who always liked me in the background. "I've removed myself entirely. Enjoy your spotlight. You'll need it because everything else is gone. Dad." He looked up in horror. I was already gone. Chapter 3. The Fallout. I didn't go far. I stood at the edge of the venue's parking lot, leaning on the railing with the cool night air brushing my face. Behind me, through the tall glass windows of the reception hall, chaos was unraveling. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I ignored it. Buzz, buzz, buzz. My son, my ex-wife, even Tom. Then came the voice I'd been waiting for, shaky, angry, and desperate. My son stood in the doorway, his tux jacket open, his bow tie dangling like a noose. "Dad," he shouted into the night. I didn't turn. "You plan this?" he demanded, panting. What the hell was all that?" I finally faced him, calm, cold, years of silence and hurt wrapped up in one expression. "Yes," I said. "I planned it the day your mother laughed in my face during our divorce and said you'd grow up to be just like her." He flinched. "But you were different," I added. "At least I thought you were until I saw how you treated me as an accessory, a wallet, background noise." My voice never rose. That made it worse. "I paid for your school, your food, that wedding. I helped with your down payment. I even smiled when you sat me with the servers at your engagement dinner." His mouth opened, but no words came. I stayed quiet every time because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd remember who was always there. But today, you made your choice. And so did I. He looked away, jaw clenched. "You destroyed everything," he hissed. "No," I said. "I gave you everything. You destroyed it." I handed him one last envelope sealed with a wax stamp. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a simple check, $10,000. "That's it?" he asked, stunned. I nodded. "That's the last gift you'll ever get from me. It's not a punishment. It's closure." Behind him, I could see his mother trying to call someone. Tom pacing, guests leaving, some filming, some whispering. Their perfect day ruined, and I was already done caring. I stepped into the driver's seat of my truck and started the engine. As I pulled away, I saw him still standing there holding that envelope like it weighed $1,000 LB. He was finally realizing what it meant to lose a father. Not by death, but by decision. Chapter 4. The Headlines. 3 days later, I woke up to a dozen missed calls and a flurry of texts from old colleagues, distant cousins, even former neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years. But it wasn't until I checked the news that I realized why. CEO's wedding crumbles as father drops. Bombshell about embezzled trust fund in viral video. There it was, a photo of my son mid-shout, his face twisted in fury. Another of the open box. I'd left at the wedding with documents split across the table, screenshots, witness tweets. One guest even captioned their clip. This went from vows to vendetta real quick. The documents had gone viral. Thousands of shares because what I left wasn't just dramatic, it was damning. The small box I'd placed at the head table contained notarized copies of bank statements, emails, and signed trust fund allocations, showing how over the years my son, pressured by his mother and stepfather, had discreetly transferred portions of the education and retirement trust I'd built into their own private accounts. They didn't think I'd ever check or fight back. They were wrong. The public reaction was swift and brutal. A trending hashtag #, Dad dropped the box. Reddit threads analyzed every line of the documents. YouTube reaction videos titled "Father Destroys" and titled "Son at His Own Wedding" hit millions of views. By the afternoon, my son's company website was under maintenance, and I heard through the grapevine that key investors were pulling out. Apparently, one of the board members, an old army buddy of mine, had seen the video. Poetic justice. That evening, a knock came at my door. It was my son. His eyes were red-rimmed, his suit wrinkled, his voice. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside, letting him in. He looked around the small cabin I'd moved into after my divorce. Simple, clean, peaceful. We sat in silence. Finally, he said, "You ruined me." I shook my head. "Numbered, I just revealed who you were becoming. I gave you everything, and you chose to become the kind of man who forgot where he came from." He nodded slowly. Then he whispered, "Can I fix it?" That I didn't answer right away because maybe he could, but not today. Epilogue. The father's final word. Months passed. The dust settled. The headlines faded, but the scars remained, quiet and invisible, etched deep into the relationships that once meant the world to me. My son lost most of his investors, and the company's valuation plummeted. His marriage, if you could even call it that, barely lasted 2 months. The bride filed for an annulment when she realized the luxurious future she was promised was built on lies, not legacy. My ex-wife and her new husband. Let's just say the IRS didn't find the mysterious trust withdrawals amusing. They moved out of state, far from the social circle they once ruled. The whispers and judgments followed them like shadows. As for me, I never went back to that life. I didn't want revenge to define me. Instead, I quietly donated the remaining trust, what hadn't been stolen, to fund scholarships for underprivileged students. One of them sent me a letter that made me weep more than the betrayal ever did. It read, "You believed in someone you didn't even know. Thank you for changing my life." And that's what I wanted my legacy to be. Not the betrayal, not the revenge, but the choice to rise above it. Final note. They say a father's love is unconditional, but so is a father's silence until it's weaponized with truth. And in the end, it wasn't the money they lost that shattered them. It was losing the man who built it all and never looked back. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Tell us what you think about this story in the comments below. Like the story if you think this story is justified. Share it with someone who needs this energy. And subscribe to Lauren's story for more jaw-dropping tales of betrayal and justice. Because here, every lie has its reckoning.